Teachers of Reddit, what are your stories of, oh god, this child is a sociopath? So I'm not entirely sure if this is sociopath or psychopath, but I had a child that was creepily into my pregnancy for the first 7 months. He wanted to name her, talk to my belly, etc. Then one day it clicked that I would leave, and he got really close to me and whispered, "When you come out, I'm going to kill you with a hammer. I hate you." I was shocked, so I took him with me to the office. The LSSP asked why he said that. He replied that it will take her away. I wanted to die, so she stays here. He was on a lot of medication for his incredibly violent tendencies. He had tried to kill his sister before by pushing her in front of a bus. His mother kept him locked in his room at night because she had found him standing over her with a knife. Edit. The child was a male 10 years old. His mother agreed to have him committed after he attempted to kill a police support dog using a pair of scissors. MHMR and CPS were both involved. I haven't seen or heard from the family since I left the district. I have seen students display all sorts of extreme behavior over the past 20 years, teaching teenagers in challenging schools. The one kid that I was convinced was a psychopath just quietly refused to do anything he didn't want to do. I never saw him angry, and yet I did see him hit people and say awful things to them. He was always eerily calm. He was tiny and very cute, but he used to manipulate people and watch chaos unfold with these huge unblinking puppy dog eyes. It was like he was carrying out an experiment. Anyway, that was when he was about 14. He's 19 now and serving a life sentence for a horrific gang murder. I worked with a student who would fit this description. The stories of the things he did are extensive. One example is that he got up from his seat to throw something away. On his way back, he walked up behind a student who was distracted working on his assignment. Out of the blue, he pushed the working student's head forward and into the desk. He gave him a bloody nose. There had been no previous altercation or source of friction between the two. His parents were divorced, and his mother was too afraid of him to have him during the days she had custody. His father would move him frequently from school to school once his behavior got so bad that the school started the process to get him into psychiatric care. I have a million stories of students who say borderline sociopathic stuff, but the worst thing I've ever heard to date was, "I can't be trusted with knives. My mommy hides all knives in the house from me because I've tried to stab everything and everyone. I know if I stab an animal or a person too much they might die. This would mean I'd go to jail, and I don't think I could make it in jail. So I want to find a dead body and stab it over and over again. This way I know I won't get in too much trouble cause the person was already dead." First grader threatened to cut my head off with a pair of scissors because I told her she couldn't put a mutilated dead body on her banner. I had a student while I was doing my student teaching, 8th grade. He was constantly in trouble, but during the times he was in class, he just stared off with the most vacant look in his eyes. It truly scared me. It was downright creepy. One day he was up at the whiteboard writing some stuff. I think it was correcting sentences, with a bunch of other kids who were doing the same thing. I wasn't watching the kids at the board, and all of a sudden I hear this blood-curdling scream and look over. He had brought a hypodermic needle and had stabbed the girl next to him in the leg. He had been holding it in his hand the entire time, just waiting for the opportunity to stick someone. It was, of course, terrible, but the girl turned out okay. The worst part, besides that, was how he laughed when security came to get him. Ugh, I'm shuddering now just thinking about it. 2 twin 8th grade boys, literal fucking lunatics, threw their dog across their living room, and it landed on the edge of the table. They said it was dead, but still moving, and they buried it. Dude, they buried a live fucking dog. This was confirmed by neighbors, and they are now in the appropriate facilities. Messed up times a million. His sister annoyed him, so he killed her kitten in front of her. Complete and utter lack of remorse. Just didn't see animals as any different from toys. Violence towards animals during childhood is very common in serial killers. This one happened just the other day, and, obviously, I'm going to be anonymous about it to protect the child's identity. Let's call her a B. So, I'm driving a minibus of students home from a basketball practice when suddenly a bee starts screaming, "Did that have peanuts in it? I'm allergic to peanuts." She begins hyperventilating and crying, and actually makes me pull over so she can get off the bus and throw up. We are about 15 minutes from the school, and I'm literally having a panic attack. So, I call the principal and ask what should I do. Do we have an EpiPen on hand at the school, ECT? She seems confused and puts a bee's grandmother on, who tells me she wasn't aware her granddaughter, who is claiming she can barely breathe, had any allergies. When we got back to the school I was about ready to faint and the principal brings out her registration paperwork to show me, no listed allergies. She isn't allergic to anything, it was all an act. The hyperventilating, the crying, even the throwing up, was all for attention. Edit, spelling. I taught a 15-year-old boy who was really creepy. He submitted a creative writing story that was rape fiction in which he graphically described how a white blonde woman was being raped to corrupt the purity she feigns, which was quite scary as a white blonde woman to read. When confronted by a vice principal, he started ranting about how he hated all the girls in the class because they were all bitches, even though none listed had ever had an interaction with him, positive or negative. He then wrote me an apology letter where heaps of the lines were aggressively crossed out with, drawn next to them. At last confrontation by a vice principal, he got really aggressive, walked out and punched the school fence several times. Unfortunately he wasn't expelled. Met this kid when he was 2.5, and he was already messed up. Super manipulative. He would chase the other kids, trying to hit or kick them. He crafted pretty convincing lies to get other kids in trouble or blame them for things he did. He did it so well that it often was impossible to know it was a lie. Other than that you knew it was him, because it was always him. At nap time he would get off the cots and try to body slam all the kids trying to sleep. If you sat with him, he would try to kick you in the face. If you tried to control him by restraining him or something like that, he'd scream that you were hurting him, and my director would come in and threaten to write us up if we touched him again. Nap time was terrible. At 3 he continued the above behaviors, but started adding in creepy threats. He told my co-teacher he was going to get a gun online, and the postman was going to bring it to his house, and he would hide it in his backpack, and bring it to school, and shoot her in the head, when she wasn't looking. He told another teacher he was going to bring a hammer, and hit her until her head looked like a plesiosaurus. At 4 he was still doing all the above creepy shit, but also was now big enough to throw chairs across the room, and had discovered gouging people's skin off with his fingernails and biting. He was not allowed to have anything even remotely sharp, ever. We pretty much had to be constantly watching him, despite having 19 other kids with 2 teachers. The ratio at 4 and up was 10 kids per teacher. During all of the above behaviors he would intersperse periods of being very sweet. As a teacher who wants the best for kids and believes they all deserve love and a place to feel safe, you'd think finally, he's opening up to me. We can work with this. We can help him. Even, selfishly, I'm the teacher who finally got to him, but that was only new teachers, and we all fell for it at least once. Inevitably it turned out he was using it to get away with things, and when you'd take another kid's side on something where he was clearly in the wrong he'd say, "But I thought you liked me now? I thought you liked me. You hate me, don't you? Nobody loves me," while crying. If you made it clear you didn't buy that, he'd pretty much just scream at you and then turn back into the terror he was. It was just an emotional fucking roller coaster with this kid, honestly. Always holding out hope eventually that little phase of being nice would be the real deal, the time it really reached him. By 5 he still wasn't potty trained. He refused, mostly, but when we pushed the matter his grandma got mad and told us never to put him in underwear. One day he showed up with stitches on his face. His grandma said he'd been bitten in the face by their dog and she was going to have it put down. We all immediately wondered what he'd done to the dog. For what it's worth I convinced her to rehome the dog, and unless she was a manipulative lying little shit like her grandson, I like to believe she was telling the truth. We had real scissors in the pre-K room, and licensing says that all art materials had to be available at all times. This includes paint and chalk, which was a headache to manage all by itself. We had to watch him because he often tried to stab people. The director wouldn't listen to reason in regards to putting them up because of him. We were just supposed to do a better job controlling the classroom. He also had begun doing weird sexual things. He would drag smaller kids under the slide or under a table where we'd be less likely to see and try to rip their pants down and hump them. He tried to grab the little girl's crotches. He started talking about genitals and asking sexual questions. His grandma insisted we were teaching him this behavior and refused to answer any questions that intimated we thought it was probable that he was being sexually abused. She'd scream about us accusing his granddaddy, who she claimed was the only person home with him when she wasn't there, and how could we do something like that, and we were all perverts. I don't even remember all of it. We had all called CPS multiple times about this kid and had never seen any follow through. I had been refusing to work in the room with him anymore because I often had bruises and scratch marks and nothing was being done to support us. We were just supposed to redirect him. If we couldn't control him without saying no, or using timeout, or restraining him in any way, we got in trouble. We were only supposed to redirect, i.e. give him special treats, thereby further encouraging the behavior and making the other kids feel they had to replicate such behavior if they also wanted special toys, activities, food, whatever. My director was a complete shat. However, when he was about 5.5 we had gotten a new director who immediately decided he was a danger to the other kids and we couldn't control him with any tools we were authorized to use. She suggested he get some outside help and perhaps reduce his time with us until his behavior improved. His grandma withdrew him instead, screaming the whole time about how we always hated her and her baby and now he wasn't going to have anyone to watch him and he was gonna get worse because we abandoned him etc etc. I really hope that little boy got help. He was a danger from before most kids were forming full sentences and continued getting worse. I hope he got removed from the toxic environment he was in and got all the help he could get. However, I will not be surprised to see his name in the newspaper someday soon connected to a violent crime or two. He would be 11 or 12 by now. Anthony was 6. He had violent tendencies towards animals and other children, severe headaches and a teddy bear containing the ashes of his dead sister. Story from a friend. As the new teacher he got stuck doing after school detention a lot his first year as a high school teacher. He didn't mind because he always stays late anyway with paperwork. Now at some point he had only one student for detention and he says she is the worst human being he's ever met. She told him that he will start marking her as having attended the detention and all future detentions or she's going to say that he assaulted her. Luckily for him, there's both cameras and microphones in the classrooms, so that never happened, and he did report it to the principal. She was later expelled for bringing a knife to school and cutting another girl's ponytail off in the bathroom. Not a teacher, sorry, but when I was younger, maybe 8, I remember going to some family gathering way out in the country. There were tons of distant relatives there. Great grandparents had 11 kids, and therefore lots of cousins I didn't know. One girl, probably 4 or 5, was scary. All of us kids would try to play with her and she would just act strange. But one thing I really remember was someone was showing us some baby chicks, letting us hold them and pet them. My mother had just explained to us, be very gentle with your babies, etc etc. Well, this little girl is holding a baby chick on her palm, looks right into my mom's eyes and just squeezes this chick until its eyes bulge. They stopped her, and to my knowledge the chick was fine, but I'll never forget the look in her eyes. Immediately after this happened, her dad scooped her up in his arms and she just looked back at all of us, smiling maniacally. Elementary school, rich preppy white boy, 11, drew a picture of only black boy, 10, in class. It showed a dead decapitated body with lots and lots of blood and a chainsaw. He then calmly explained to me how he was planning to murder and cut up the other boy, and how he doesn't deserve to have presents for Christmas as he's black and Santa doesn't like black kids. Had to contact the headmaster and parents. Jokes on him, the headmaster was a very cool black lady. Had a child who enjoyed stalking and terrorizing younger children at daycare. You could see he got a wicked kick out of it, and we were basically powerless aside from taking children away from him. He was beyond awful. A colleague looked after a child who was so jealous of his younger brother that he was slowly poisoning him by adding household cleaners to the milk. Then parents tried to get him to have milk one day and he refused and admitted there was cleaner in it at 4 years of age. Seriously, God help us, because some people are just no right from the very beginning and I don't believe will ever come right. Thanks for watching. Consider liking and subscribing. Peace.